personally get involved in this?
I
You're not Asian.
totally,
I mean,
totally. Yeah,
how-
I'm lucky to have had this come into my life, and basically I had graduated from Cornell with an environmental science degree, and I was working as an environmental consultant. I always had a passion for a more natural way to look at the world. And I was at this consulting firm and realized that I didn't want to get an MBA, and decided to get acupuncture when a colleague of mine tried acupuncture on me, and it worked. And I was very impressed, and I did research, like I looked into that NIH study that I had talked about.
So you actually were treated with
Yes.
acupuncture, and you felt like, hey,
Yep.
there's
I
something
was
here.
actually very surprised. I come from a very science background, and I never would have gone into it if it hadn't worked on me. And it actually very much stunned me. It had to do with my menstrual cycle, which is a very internal system, and I was actually very surprised that it had such a quick and obvious effect on that system. So that impressed me.
So the thing about acupuncture that always scares me, and I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of people,
Totally.
is like, ooh, those needles.
Totally,
And
totally.
you said they're hair thin.
They are.
But is there pain involved?
Well, on the initial, they're about 50 times thinner than a hypodermic needle, and they're not hollow, so they don't have a cutting edge. They're actually solid needles, so they push the skin aside instead of actually cutting like a straw
Right.
cuts a potato. They're not like that. They actually just push the skin aside.
So, they're not hollow inside.
No, they're not.
I see.
They're solid needles. So on the insertion of the needle, most people either feel nothing or they'll feel like a little mosquito bite or something like that. So it's a very mild. So everybody says, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what I was so afraid of." You know, this is nothing. They're pleasantly surprised.
So once you use that needle, how long does it stay in, and per treatment, and how many times do they have to come back for treatment?
Yep. So the one acupuncture session is usually like an intake where I check in on the status of the patient, and then I'll put the needles in, and they'll lay on the table for anywhere from 15 to 40 minutes, depending on what they're getting treated for. And then the number of times that they need to come back really depends on, one, what they're coming in for, and two, how new the problem is to the body. The sooner you catch something, the easier it is to fix it. So the longer something's been ingrained into the body, the more time it takes to unpeel it from the body.
And when you use these needles, are you aiming for something? Is there something that you're looking for? Is there a nerve or something that you're...
Basically, it's not a structural sensation that we're looking for. I'm looking for, we call it the chi sensation, and chi is energy. So I'm looking for a response in the tissue of the patient that tells me that the body has been activated by the needle. It sort of feels different on different points, and it feels different in different people, but the general idea is that there's a tension at the tip of the needle that sort of feels like two North Pole magnets being pushed towards each other. There's like a give and take that you can feel kind of tense around the...
As you're putting in
when it's in the right spot. So, and otherwise, if that sensation's not there, it's very empty. You could be like needling into like a pillow, like there's nothing there. So that I'm looking for that activation, and then the needle's in the right spot, and then the patient relaxes. Most people fall asleep. They find it very relaxing, and then I come take the needles out and send them on their way.
Okay, and so say you're relaxing there, how many needles are we talking about?
Yeah, the less needles the better from everybody's perspective, but it depends. I mean, every acupuncturist has their own style. Mine is more, I would say I use anywhere from 10 to 20 needles in a session. If there's something musculoskeletal going on, then I might use more in that specific area, but the general full body treatments are 10 to 20 needles. And most of them are bilateral, so it's really 5 to 10 acupuncture points that are used bilaterally.
Are there any health concerns in terms of, like, are you worried that somebody might bleed when you use the needle? With,
yeah, some of the
infection.
Totally, those are all very common questions. Basically, the needles are sterilized. They're single use. They're not even reused on the same patient. So the risk of infection is as minimal as it is for any medical device. What was your other question?
No, just how infections are prevented.
Right.
But
And bleeding, you had said also.
And bleeding, but tell me that when we come back, because
Sure.
we want one other thing that we definitely want to talk about is
Totally.
pregnancies.
Totally.
Which is another
Absolutely.
one of your specialties. So
Totally.
we'll be